Good evening, everybody. We're going to get started a little bit early, so hit the like button, hit the share. We're going to be with you shortly. We're just getting our screens organized and getting our speakers ready, so bear with us for one moment. We'll be right with you.
What am I to do but tear away when I'm boiling at the top? Try to find a way to fight the fire, smart to rap from the minds of liars. Call the shots as you bow your heads and the match never stops. The stars could be free, but this insanity bends you right by the knee. Running in circles now for something that can't be found. And I bet as you hit the wall, the rain starts to fall. You can run away, sing a tune that's true. I'll be beside you. Of blood, regrets of laughter. Turn around as your heart beat faster. Your hollow shape as the faith begins to drop. Shelter can find your thoughts of suicide. It's hanging down by the fray. Oh, running in circles now for something that can't be found. And there's no time for today. You prayed away. The world would be untrue. I will rise against you. insanity bends you right by the nail. Running in circles now for something that can't be found. Out of breath, she smashed the wall. The water consumed all. You prayed away that the world would be untrue as you.
Good evening, everybody. Tonight, we're going to be having a juicy debate between Mark and Hussein. Islam versus secular humanism. Which is best for society? And Mark Reid is going to start us out. So 10 minutes, Mark, and the floor is all yours. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Just one sec. I'll just share my screen, mate, as per usual. Yep.
There we go.
Are we all good?
You are good to go.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here and listening to me. Thank you to Ryan for moderating, and of course Hussein for coming in. And this is about secular humanism versus Islam. So I'll go through a few tenets of where I see each sitting, especially focusing on secular humanism, because that is my side, or the proposition that I'm putting down. So secular, basically, first off, what is secular humanism? Now, humanist beliefs have been held in common with many civilizations. They're found in ancient Greek's philosophy, especially pre-Socratic philosophers. Protagoras, who lived in Athens in 440 BC, put forth some fundamental humanist ideas. Only fragments of his work survive, but we've got people like Epicurus who sort of went through a sort of secular hold of morality and understanding the world without appealing to any gods or any superstitions of Greek mythology. There are also elements of humanism throughout things like the Renaissance and the Enlightenment. So it's a philosophy or particular belief system that maintains morals and ethics are possible by understanding humanity's place in the natural world and are not derived from any dogma handed down by any religious institution or belief in a deity. A rejection is made by secular humanism that people are not inherently good or evil, and evaluates what is good or bad by studying the effect our actions have on society and the rest of humanity. Although there's several schools of thought regarding humanism, the core principles of human rights and moral codes that all humanists embrace. Now, the principles of humanism were summarized in the Amsterdam Declaration, which outlined the general principles that secular humanists follow. We accept that morality is inherent to the human condition. We affirm the worth and dignity of the individual and the right of every human to the greatest possible freedom and the fullest possible development compatible with the rights of others. We hold that personal liberty must be combined with a responsibility to society. We recognize that we are part of nature and accept our responsibility for the impact we have on the natural world. We are convinced that the solutions to the world's problems lie in human reason and human action. We value all sources of individual joy and fulfillment that harm no other. And we believe that personal development through the cultivation of creative and ethical living is a lifelong undertaking. Therefore, we appreciate artistic creativity, imagination, and transforming power of the arts. Though we believe that a commitment to human well-being is ageless, our particular opinions are not based on revelations fixed for all time, meaning they can change over time. We're committed to the unfettered expression and exchange of ideas to seek cooperate with people of different beliefs who share our values in the cause of building a better world. That's sort of a summation from the Amsterdam Declaration, just to sum up what they think and what we think. So it's a culmination of long traditions of reasoning about meaning and ethics, the source of inspiration of many of the world's humanitarians and artists, and it's interwoven with the rise of modern science. Essentially, humanism takes the best of what humanity has learnt over its journey and meld it now and into the future with our best understanding of the effect our actions have on society and our planet in general. The goals of secular humanism are to produce flourishing human societies and encourage development of humanity for the benefit of all, not just humanists. Understanding that personal liberty must be balanced with a responsibility to society and a responsibility to all humans, regardless of race, sex, country, humans everywhere. It's based on understanding the needs of humans, and it uses methodological naturalism, which is science, to make observations on how humans are affected by the choice you make. It's important to note, however, that while science can tell us how something works, it's up to us to determine whether it's good or bad for ourselves. We maintain that we do not need anything other than ourselves and our rationality to apply morality, reject superstition and wishful thinking. Although understanding that we don't have the right to change or attempt to change people's beliefs by force, we never seek to impose ourselves on the world. If we wish people to acknowledge our beliefs, we have to acknowledge theirs. In this secular humanism is perfectly compatible to any ideology or religion which seeks the betterment of humanity and society. So these are sort of the benefits to society that we can go through. It doesn't make an appeal to any authority, so it doesn't lay down dictates or dogmatic edicts. All it does is seek to guide us to what is best for humans. It makes no claim to inherent moral superiority and rather judges ethical actions by the effect on humans and other societies. So it can take in things from other ideologies, other religions, other worldviews, because it doesn't claim to have a moral superiority of them and has no need to prove that moral superiority. Humanism is flexible and acknowledges that knowledge is and understanding is an ongoing process that will last far beyond after we're gone. So it's compatible with any ideology that promotes human well-beings. And that's one of the major strengths of secular humanism. So what's Islam? According to the traditional account, the Islamic prophet, Muhammad, got what we Muslims consider to be divine revelations calling for submission to one God, and Islam literally means submission. This was based upon the expectation of the imminent last judgment, where there's a story about paradise or 7 hells for all of humanity. So if Islam means submission, what's it submission to? Well, it means to submit to the will of Allah, or will of a God. Although it is the interpretation of man that all we have to understand what the will of the God is. There's no dictates from a God. Instead, Muslims argue over what gods want. There's no consistent goal for Islam except God's will. And with no one to clarify what that is, there's no goal except the interpretation of men, whose interpretation seems to coincide with what they want. So the problems with the Quran, I'm just going to point out a few, maybe we can discuss them, and problems that I, as a secular humanist, has with the Quran and what it advocates for. First off, the Quran is misogynistic. This is a verse, An-Nisa, which is the women's verses that sort of point out that, you know, your daughter only gets half of what the sons get when you die. I would pose it as, well, what if the daughter is more capable? What if the son is reckless with finance? The Quran makes no distinction between this. It simply says that the son gets more. I think that this is harmful for humanity. I think that we should be acknowledging who is better to have a inheritance, rather than go with what a verse says. Shouldn't the parent decide who is better to receive it? This is the verse on protectors and maintainers of women, and if the woman disobeys the man, that they eventually sort of ostracize them from bed and then beat them, albeit lightly, is the verse translation. Why is it that the women are the ones that are beaten? Why can't the man be beaten? It never says that, and sort of says that women are less to men. This is something that I have a problem with. This is where if your woman's guilty of lewdness, basically you imprison them, confine them in house until death, or until Allah, who doesn't seem to make any kind of opinion on the subject, ordains them for some other way. Generally, it's up to a man who's put in charge, a Sufi or cleric, to decide that her punishment is done. However, if 2 men are guilty of lewdness, punish them both. But if they repent and amend, leave them alone, which is different than how you are treating a woman. It's unfair in society. It supports ostracizing the family. This verse says that if your fathers and your brothers or friends, if they prefer disbelief to faith, take not of them, or don't be their friends. It really does alienate families. This is backed up by the application of unequal tax in the jizya, which is essentially Oh, sorry.
30 seconds.
And it produced 30. Oh, okay. So it creates a stratified society where people are subservient to others, or treated less equally than others, and is generally bad for society. It can also be seen the jizya as a manipulated way to make people pay more if they're not is Muslim. So they're encouraged, or I would say coerced, to become a Muslim through this tax. The brutal punishments. Thieves have their hands cut off. People that fight against or wage war against Allah are basically brutally chopped apart. So these brutal punishments, I would feel, have no place in society. But the verses haven't been abrogated. They haven't been taken away. They are still in the Quran, and they're still a valid part of the Quran. So we've got it. Okay, thank you. Sorry to cut it short. I ran out of time, but thank you very much for hearing me out.
No problem. Sorry to cut you a little bit short there, Mark. We just went over the time,
No problem.
We might get get some time to go back over those notes as we continue on. And hey, everybody, thanks for being here. We appreciate you hanging out here at Modern Day Debate. Definitely hit the like button, hit the share. I'll also let you know that our speakers are going to be linked in the description below, along with our crowdfund to our debate that's coming up here. We have a little event, so we have tickets for that in the description. But if you check out our crowdfund, because I'm not going to be there. I can't make it, but you still want to support us. For $5 US, you can support us without a perk, but everything after that, you get a perk. So $10, you get your name in the credits. $25, you get a postcard thank you. For $50 US, signed Modern Day Debate emblem, and for $75, you can get a signed photo of your favorite debater. $100, you get a Zoom chat with James, and you can ask him anything you want, like, why are you letting Ryan talk so much on the show? All right, so we're going to kick it into open discussion, everybody. So check that out in the description after the debate. Oh, not open discussion. Sorry. Yes, we have an intro. Sorry, Hussein.
Yeah, let's just skip Hussein altogether. Yeah,
we got off track because of the crowdfunding.
This Western oppression, guys.
So we got off track because of all the crowdfunding. Anyways, don't mind me. Hussein, 10 minutes. The floor is all yours. Thanks for being here, buddy.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you all for being here. Assalamu alaikum to anyone who's Muslim. And, inshallah, this goes well. So I'm going to start off with verse 45:23 from the Quran. It says, have you seen he who has taken his God, his own desire, and Allah has sent him astray due to knowledge, and has set up seal upon his hearing in his heart, and put over his vision a veil. So who will guide him after Allah? Then will you not be reminded? So this is essentially quoting like a thing that is memified throughout society. So people will have essentially like what they call like the God hole. And so they'll fill it up with any sort of type of idol. Islam, we believe that no one is really an atheist. Everyone makes an idol out of something. It could be drugs, alcohol, money, ideology, nationalism, racism, racial supremacy, that is. So, and atheists like to claim, however, that they're free of dogma. But I believe after this debate, I'll be able to show you that secular humanism, in a way, is actually a dogma and a religion. So, and it's not objectively morally grounded where religion is. So, anyway, so the Quran stated this 1400 years ago, and it knows obviously, I believe that it would know better about human beings than atheists want to admit. So, as far as, where am I getting that this is a dogma? So there are several studies, as well as social scientists and psychologists, who confirm this point. Charles Taylor wrote that any transcendental idea, which would include secular humanism, would be a religion. Amelia Durkheim also wrote this as well, and the U.S. Supreme Court actually stated secular humanism as a religion, as much as it probably pains atheists. Jung argued that in The Undiscovered Self, that you can't take away a man's God, but only give him others in return. Jung goes on to say that the state can take place of the God, and that's why, seen from this angle, socialist dictatorships are essentially religions into them of themselves. State slavery is a form of worship, and the policy of the state is exalted to a creed, and the later becomes a demigod beyond good and evil. And we can see this played out throughout history. So Um, anyone who thinks differently would be labeled like a heretic per Jung and per like this ideology. So in a way that both people can obviously be fanatical, right? So there are definitely like more religious atheists that are less as nice as Mark per se. So Jung's theory is called the law of conservation of religious instinct, and it's a social science version of Newton's law and the conservation of momentum. Religions never actually go away, it just goes somewhere else. Islam predicted this 1400 years ago. In America today, we actually see this in the form of ideology, and there's plenty of papers on this from Forbes, Atlantic, Vox, and they talk about how human beings turn to political ideologies as a form of dogma and religion. And I would argue atheists do this with secular humanism because without God, there is no objective morality, and thus there is no good or bad, actually. So we can merely look at it being subjective flavors of ice cream, if you will. Good and moral is going to be different from one another. Mark, I believe, even agreed to this in the beginning. He's just saying that we can maybe empirically decide what is good or bad, but that just leads to consequentialism, and there's problems in that as well. So moral relativism claims what is truly correct outside the individual can't be made. It's contingent upon individuals, and universe progress is subjective, and it's incomprehensible and paradoxical. Secular humanism attempts to affirm the intrinsic value of humanity while rejecting religion and superstition. However, Paul Kurtz, the father of secular humanism, even admits that he is essentially trying to combine a moral system built on the principles of free inquiry, ethics based upon reason, commitment to science, democracy, and freedom. Every one of those values, though, is ungrounded in the world of naturalism and materialism, as well as scientific determinism. So a general moral obligation requires transcendent value. Otherwise, morality is a sophisticated herd instinct or social construct, a hobby, or a mere opinion. So you can't actually oblige anyone to do anything. So a big problem with atheists, often they'll say you ought to do something, but why can they tell me to do that? And why should I ought to even care about humanity or the outcomes of humanity? There's a lot of presuppositions in these in secular humanisms. So according to ethicist Peter Singer, we can't. Humanity is not sacred. The post-humanist, if you will, moral system unsurprisingly permits infanticide and bestiality. Camus and Nietzsche also accepted that without God, there's only nihilism, and they both come to different conclusions. So he realizes, Friedrich Nietzsche, without God, famously renouncing conventional ethics and he proposed a value system based on self-realization and power. So there's no such thing as good and bad, or what someone ought to do. I should say moral, like truths. There's good and bad to him. He influenced Foucault, who is the pioneer of postmodernism, which categorically rejected the notion of truth. Essentially, power alone animates every dimension of life and society. Jean-Paul Sartre admits as well that essentially we're just human beings making it up. The implication there would be that it's not actually real. So Camus wrote as well that humanism is a false ideal, and in reality, it's meaningless. They're only deluding themselves and not facing the true reality of a world without God. Evil does not exist. Things just happen, and then you die. So it's pretty bleak, but that would be the true outcome of atheism, I would argue. So Nietzsche again states secular humanism is a byproduct of Christianity, mostly why it arose out of the Renaissance and the Western world, and also attacks secular humanism as its presuppositions are just hangovers of a belief in God. And once God is eradicated, the belief in human beings would follow the same way. I would like to have Mark explore this and see, why should we care about humanity? Why should we care about human flourishing? And then there's some interesting things when we get into democracy. So some Islamic governments use democracy, which secular humanists claim to care about, to elect Sharia law. And then all of a sudden they're getting sanctioned and bombed and drone striked by Obama and other people who claim to follow the UN Charter and secular humanism. So it's very interesting. And I have a lot more to go over, like my problems with like materialism, how the materialist worldview has led to like Nazism and communism, and how they argued in a way. They're secular religions per sociologists. So why is secular humanism the religion in a way we should follow when clearly other people chose white nationalism, Nazism, communism, Marxism, Leninism, Maoism, pick any political ideology, and they could just choose to follow them. So.
All right. Would that be the end of your intro? Yeah, he's having a drink, everybody. So
No.
let us. Oh.
Sorry, I'm good.
Yeah, excellent. All right. Well, thank you for your introductory statement there, Hussein. I'm glad we got it. And what we're going to do now, everybody, is we're going to kick it into open discussion. We appreciate you guys all being here at Modern Day Debate. We are a neutral platform hosting debates on science, politics, and religion. We hope you feel welcome. And we'll kick it over to Mark to start our open discussion in response to what he just heard.
Yeah, so I feel like a lot of the sort of leverages of these people that you're leveraging against me aren't actually secular humanists. In fact, a long way from it. Like Sartre was, Jean-Paul Sartre was probably a sort of existential nihilist would be the proper description for him. So it feels like to me that you're sort of saying, hey, all atheists are this and atheists are that, but not all atheists are secular humanists.
No, so, I'm fully agreeing to that. I'm saying that they are alleging that secular humanism is not the when you take atheism to its conclusion, it is essentially just existentialism, nihilism, or in Camus' case, absurdity. So I'm arguing.
Well, I don't think that's true.
They are not saying secular humanism is a like a logical conclusion. They're essentially saying what I'm saying is that it's a bunch of presuppositions with no proof without God.
Well, sure, everybody makes presuppositions, and I don't know why we would need. There's no proof with God in your sort of presuppositions here, so I don't know why that would be a problem. But you know, you've sort of pointed out. Hang on a second. Hang on. You pointed out people like the Nazis and things, but the Nazis were mostly Catholic, and you know, I think that sort of Hitler had his weird occult, almost Germanic sort of weird occult religion, but he certainly wasn't an atheist, and he certainly wasn't a secular humanist. So I think when we're talking about secular humanism, we've got to talk about secular humanists, not communists and fascists and other people that certainly were not secular humanists. So you seem to be leveraging just, I mean, I could point out Muslims that have done terrible, terrible things. You know, I could go through a list if you'd like, but that doesn't mean that all Muslims and Islam have to fall into this one category.
I'm not saying every secular humanist is a Nazi, or my point in showing these groups and some
there's an
argument.
Is a secular humanist.
So there is a debate, right? If Nazis were truly a Christian, followers. And there's some Nazi ideology supposedly that says that actually religion is bad and in the way of what they want to do, actually. So I'm saying that's debated. My point is that if you take away God, right? Okay, it's not that the initial conclusion would follow that we should all accept secular humanism. Does that make sense?
Well, no, of course not. But you said you can't take away God, right? That
the take away God part is that humanism derives that humans are intrinsically good because of God. Like that's where it started.
No, absolutely incorrect. As I said in my opening, humans neither say that human beings are intrinsically good or evil, right? Not intrinsically. You're not saying that humans are intrinsically good. It is their actions that we base whether it's good or bad on. So that's just wrong. You said in your intro,
if they're not intrinsically good to you, why should I care about their flourishing?
Because they can do good things, and we've
seen
but why should I care? Evidence for that. Well, because you're human.
So what?
Well, do you have empathy?
I do, but maybe someone else doesn't. Right.
Well, I mean, usually when we're
maybe I only have empathy within my group because psychological papers show that human beings are herd creatures and they only care about tribalism. So, for example, like a lot of Americans, they may not be racist per se, but they definitely only want America to flourish. And America to flourish versus, say, other nations. So it doesn't seem like what secular humanism hinges on or even presupposes is actually true. So, for example, when you were talking about in your
Hold on. You've gone through multiple points there. Let's go back. America is not a secular humanist nation. Let's face it. It's not a humanist nation at all. It is a capitalist nation. No, it doesn't matter. It may operate with some secular humanist principles, and it is a secular nation, but it's the humanism that we're talking about. The whole point of humanism is to acknowledge that all humans are valuable, that all humans have certain inalienable rights. And so if you're saying, hey, I might not agree that those humans have those rights and those humans shouldn't be, then you're not a humanist. Like, you've basically violated the entire definition of humanism. If you're separating into, well, I just care about this one country, then you're an Americanist. Right, that you're not a humanist.
I never was saying that they're humanists. I'm saying that your presuppositions are not actually true and reflective of the real world. So you are literally just preaching religious dogma. So
what are my presuppositions?
Yeah, so for example, you said, do humans strive to be rational? Well, actually, that's debatable. So Robert Zajac said that decisions are made with little to no cognitive process, and we make actually judgments first and then seek to justify those judgments by rationalization. And then choice blindness experiments where subjects are tricked into believing that they made decisions that they did not actually make, but nonetheless explain them as if they did. There's also like human evolved.
Hold it. Let's examine that. You don't get to just brush aside that and keep on going. So what better way than rationality would you like to use to evaluate decisions?
I mean, me being a Muslim, it would be under God's law, which is an objective law. You know, but okay, you would obviously not agree with that.
Is it objective?
If God exists,
where does it come from? So does the law? Well, it comes from an outside source. Okay, so it comes from God. Does God decide what is moral, or is that something that God conveys as something moral and he conveys it?
Well, what God says is moral.
What God says is, so he decides what is moral and what is not. So how is that objective? It still starts dependent.
It's through objective because it's through his infinite wisdom.
Well, it doesn't matter. He's still got a stance, right? He still knows what is... he dictates what is moral and what is not moral. That is still subjective. It's just that the subject determining what is moral happens to be the God. If he has got the wisdom to relay that from elsewhere, then maybe it's objective, but then you're kicking the can down the road. Where does it come from then?
So, I mean, do you mean like, because there's a whole philosophy on this. So like the argumentation from morality, where they talk about how God is the source of objective morality. If morality is objective and absolute, then God must exist. Morality is objective and absolute, therefore God must exist. Like they literally talk about this. So
yeah, I don't think.
But you're saying that we should use science.
There are moral stances, but not moral facts.
Let's let Hussein wrap up his idea there.
So my point go back to what we're talking about is that humans strive to be rational. That's an assumption. So I can argue that human beings throughout the real world, you see, don't make rational decisions all the time.
No, humanists strive to be rational.
Yes.
I'm not saying every single particular individual human does, but I'm saying that humanists strive to be rational, and rationality appears to be the best way to evaluate whether something is true or whether something is not true. Any certain proposition put forward is true or not true. I mean, you've got verses in the Quran that unless you agree cutting off the hands of thieves is a good thing, that you've evaluated and decided whether you want to implement them or not.
Yeah, correct? Why not? Yes, yeah.
You want to cut the hands off.
Yeah, there's parameters on how it happens, yes. And then you can side with mercy, but yeah, it's to make examples. And in the long run, it may be better for society. I mean, I can use consequentialism to argue those as well. I can use Dentonology or Kantianism essentially to argue those as well.
Virtue ethics.
No, not virtue ethics. Kantianism ethics, yes.
Okay. So what about the surah about beating a woman if she disagrees with you? Do you agree with that?
It's not beating a woman. It says discipline. There's a difference between discipline and like beating, Mark. I think we would both agree to that, right? Like when
Yeah,
you're a
it
child, if
depends
you're
on the.
striked to give discipline, then I don't think that's very problematic. But if you're describing it as beating and you're using that word, then I would say, yeah, beating is not allowed under Sharia.
Well, it depends, because the earlier translations all describe it as lightly beating your wife. But as we've gotten to the modern era, it's kind of changed to discipline, but that is understood in most of the Muslim world that that discipline does involve some sort of physical admonishment for the wife.
Yes, to show that you're mad. Yeah. So if you are with some people, don't need to do that at all because they're the best example of husbands, which is Muhammad, peace be upon him, did. He never had to strike one of his wives. However, some men are weaker men and they can't do that. So they may have to discipline their wife or children because they're supposed to be the leaders of the familial role in Islam. And there's a sensible reason for that.
Is
we
it
can
immoral to do that?
Yeah, if
Is it immoral?
psychologically speaking, if in general women are more agreeable, and then then what's the problem with that? Like again, all these things are presuppositions through the secular worldview, which don't actually hold up when you examine them in any type of psychological way, sociological way.
No. Let's get back to the actual subject. They're not presuppositions. The presuppositions that I make are very basic, and then through rationality, I've come to that, which is
So you still haven't
perhaps an
told me how
inductive.
human beings are
Excuse me. Hey, an inductive process, which may in fact be sort of based upon a foundation of rationality and working up to it, but it's not a presupposition. I haven't entered this into, oh well, this is just something that I'm deciding ahead of time that I don't have evidence for. I have evidence that this kind of treating women this badly is bad for society. That's not a presupposition.
So if I provide here's another good example. So if I provide studies that show that Islamic marriages are better than secular marriages, would you then agree that Islam is better?
What do you mean by better?
Well, so again, this goes into how it's subjective. But if I say that having society with strong marriages is the most important value, and then this type of way to behave increases that, then that's providing that type of utility, right?
Do you mean that Islam has less divorces?
Yes, we could argue that, yeah.
Yes, because it needs dispensation from clerics and authority figures in order to gain a divorce, who often don't give that divorce. So that's sort of what we call in statistics lurking variables, where you're basically saying, hey, because statistic rate's lower, they must be better marriages. But that's not necessarily the case, because Islam makes it more difficult to obtain a divorce. So a lot of the time, what you have is unhappy people within that marriage, but they can't leave and they feel it's onus on them to stay, because they just can't get a divorce. Add to that all of the if we want to bring up some of the horrible stuff going in Islam, I'm more than happy to, like the genital mutilation of girls and the horrible honor killings that go on in the Islamic world. Like, is that something you support? Honor killings?
Well, of course not. That's not even in Sharia. So that's just a backwards cultural thing. So anyways, so you still haven't answered on humans striving to be rational. So you admit that not all human beings do this.
Well, I think humans always think they're sort of being rational. We do have sort of norms for rationality. We know that when someone is sort of not thinking in a way that is sort of sane, and instead thinking in a way that is distorted kind of thing. But besides the presupposition of the logical absolutes, which lead to rationality, which lead to an implementation of this rationality, and we can disagree on what that is, I think that all humans do strive to be rational as far as that they understand it.
So is it a problem that essentially, like, do you believe secular humanism can tell someone how they ought to behave? It's like, let me ask that.
Yes.
Okay, how, if it's subjective? Because Islam, obviously, right, we say we have objective values or moral values, so we can easily tell that, right? But for example, right, Biden and other Dem people within the United States, right? They would say sanctioning Brunei, a tiny country that is just trying to escape its third world poverty, should be sanctioned because they democratically elected to have Sharia law. So is that a good decision or a bad decision, and why
That's
so?
a bad decision.
Okay.
Because I've already said, like, because secular humanists don't impose themselves on anybody. We don't demand that you adhere to secular humanism the way that Islam generally does. We don't kill apostates as been going on in the Islamic world, or any punishment for changing religion, or sort of handing in secular humanism for other things. It's based upon an understanding that because you and I are human, and if we want humans to flourish, then the best way to do that is by helping each other. Now,
Yeah, but
if
so
you
what
don't
if
care,
what,
hang on.
okay.
If you don't care about human well-being, then yeah, I can't objectively say you have to care about human well-being. I can even say if you care about your own well-being, it's in your best interest to do it, and that's a moral ought. But if you don't care about your own well-being, and you don't care about society, and you don't care about humans, there's nothing I see in the universe objectively that makes you have to do that.
Okay. Well, so you could argue, though, however, that what Biden is doing is actually good for human flourishing. It's the same reason that people said that dropping like the atomic bomb was useful. So like they're saying that the consequences is better for humanity overall than the other option, essentially, right? So with the consequentialism and utilitarianism, you can essentially justify anything. And my point was that is, and here's an irony, right? When you're talking about like Sharia, so Sharia says spying is a crime, spying is illegal, unlike NATO and America, who will spy on its own citizens, right? The Sharia states you cannot bomb innocents or kill innocents. There's even a Quranic quote on that that says that killing one human being is as if you killed all of humanity. But as a utilitarian or a consequentialist, and this could be someone who's a secularist, could argue, well, we do need to bomb those Western, Muslim nations because they oppress women, and you have no way to tell them they ought not to do that. And
No,
if we agree,
no.
then it's fine. The debate's over.
No. Because you've said a number of things, but the thing you've omitted, right? You've said secularist, right? You've said secularist, you've said consequentialist, you've said utilitarianist, but what you haven't said is humanist. And I think that's on purpose. I think you're leaving that out because you know damn well that a humanist would never agree to that thing, which is wiping out humanity. If your goal is the well-being of humans, how is bombing somebody achieving that goal? It isn't, right? Like this is the whole song and dance that we're doing. We're talking about secular humanism, but Hussein just wants to talk about secularism and sort of this over here and this over here. You're not actually hitting the humanism, which is saying, hey,
you can be
humans,
a humanist.
hang on. Humans have intrinsic rights that cannot be violated. I don't know what you were listening to when I did my presentation, because it went through that humans have human rights. So if you believe in human rights, you're not bombing the innocent. You're not killing people offhand. And you keep dancing around the humanist part of it and saying secularism and this and communism and fascism.
All right, let's let him respond to what you just said there, Mark.
So you can be a humanist and believe that these will achieve a greater end goal for human flourishing. And it may not be always saying killing, but you could say, oh, well, we're killing an enemy combatant. Oh, the collateral damage, that's just okay. You can argue that as a human, you can easily argue that. Same thing with, what is it? Because it's not directly killing people per se, but you can argue that as a humanist, we should sanction because other rights are more important. It even says in your thing that democracy is important. But then when people try to elect democratically elected governments, for example, like in Egypt or Brunei, or in any like Islamic country where they elected a Muslim government, all of a sudden it becomes problematic. So that's why I'm saying these values that you guys actually hold are at odds.
Well, the hilarious thing is you're claiming to have objective morality and that Islam gives you objective morality. Yet what you've quoted is the American government, which isn't a secular humanist government. In fact, most of the people in the government are Christians. You can argue the government's secular, but certainly not the individuals making the decisions, and they're certainly not humanist. And the whole point is that you're saying, hey, because Islam says that this is a you can't kill innocent people. Well, obviously, a Islamic person has never killed an innocent person in the history of Islam, because that's objective. That's objective, and that prevents us. But it's unfortunate that sort of all the suicide bombings, all of the terrible things done by Islamic people, they obviously didn't get your objective morality. It seems to me that it's all subjective, even though you claim it is objective.
No, that's just people being bad Muslims.
It all depends on the interpretation. It's something that comes with Islam, though, doesn't it? Are they real Muslims, or are they not Muslims?
So they can still be Muslim and believe in like one God and all these things, but they can be sinful, and that's within the Islamic paradigm. Now, did they commit crimes? Should they be held accountable for it? Yes, sure. But that can be the same thing. I'm sure. Would you say like certain people who claim to be secular humanists, but then they do something bad, for example, or they make the wrong calculated choice? Like, could you say the same thing then?
Sure,
but we don't agree then on that.
But we don't have a book pointing out how it is good to cut the hands off people, to dismember people. We don't have a book that says it is good to imprison a woman for life if she commits a sinful behavior. We don't have a book that says all of these horrible things to do to people. I mean, do you agree that if someone attacks Islam, and it's very subjective what attacking Islam means, isn't it? That they should be dismembered with their limbs torn away.
Well, so there's plenty of like tafsirs, as well as you can like review Ottoman Empire on these hudud punishments that you're talking about, and they're not
That's
exactly
in the Quran.
Like, yeah. So no, of course I'm not saying they're not. What I'm saying is that within like Islamic governments and caliphates, right? They did not actually like impose these as much as you're trying to say, and they had rules within in context within when they should do it, and some of it would be on to the interpretation of scholars, and there's debate within that. But this is in a way the same thing for secular humanism. But some of these people may just be bad; they're just sinful and abusing their power, and that's not Islamic. I wouldn't blame say like Islam on that, when it says it's against it in Islam. So
is the Quran a moral guide? Is it a perfect moral guide?
I would argue, yeah.
Then it has in there those... No, hang on. Because it has in there those things that you said they're being a bad Muslim for doing. So how do you have the Quran being a perfect moral guide say to cut the hands off thieves and to tear apart people who attack Islam, and then say, well, that person's being sinful for doing exactly that, if it's a perfect moral guide?
So the context of the one where it says attack the people who are Islam is in war. So it's just you're like, and I can go through the ones you asked, like the no goal of Islam. Like I wrote some of those down, so I can go over that too.
Wait, so it's okay to dismember people if they're enemy combatants?
If you're in a war and they're attacking you, yes, but you can't kill prisoners of war. So if they surrender, then actually Islam does have guidelines on that. So you can read, there's entire books on it, like just war theory within Islam, and how funny enough, we started that. So,
but you'll agree that it's moral because the Quran says so, to cut hands from people that steal. Cut their hands off.
Yeah, I don't know how that's so problematic to have rules and boundaries for society, and then harsh punishments to make examples of people, and to make it so that people don't do these actions. And in fact, it may be good for the thief because they'll never do it again.
Has anyone ever been convicted of thievery wrongly?
In Islamic countries?
In any countries?
Possibly, yeah. I'm not.
Yeah. Like, so how do you give them their hands back when you find out that you're wrong?
Well, if they're wrong, then there's usually retribution. It's the same thing. America accidentally kills
retribution.
People. Yeah, like restitution, excuse me, wrong word. But it's the
Restitution
same
for
thing.
the guy with no hands.
Yeah, you
How
can
would
say,
you feel if you were wrongly convicted of committing a crime like theft and had your hands hacked off in a medieval brutal way and then told, whoops, sorry, we were wrong. Here, have a bit of money for it?
I mean, it would be one. I'm pretty sure for that punishment, there has to be like no how do I say it? Not very much doubt. Like a lot of these punishments require multiple witnesses. So the example you're giving wouldn't really apply. It's the same thing when they talk about
Really?
like,
So
homosexuality.
you think you can get and that Islam gets justice perfect, does it? That it never makes a mistake,
Yeah.
regardless of the
Islamic law, not Muslims.
Islamic law never makes a mistake.
No, I'm saying Islamic law can be perfect, but human beings can be flawed. I'm living in the
Right.
real world, so of course I'm open to saying that some Muslims are less than
Yeah.
Islamic, if you will, right? But you're living in a world where you're again presupposing a lot, and I don't think it's true. That's why I said like, well, actually, there's a lot of evidence that says human beings aren't rational. There's a lot of evidence that shows, well, human beings aren't always actually the most ethical. And then there's also philosophically people who entirely disagree. And
So
they
you're
say
trying to
there's no such
argue that
thing as
you're not
morality.
rational. So you're trying to argue that you're not rational.
No, I think I'm rational, but I'm saying some
Then
human,
who thinks
and you admitted
well,
this.
I think we're rational. I mean, who thinks we're not rational then? If you don't think if you think we're rational and I think we're rational, then why are you even bringing this up?
No, I think me and you, right, are rational. I don't think every human
Right.
being is rational. And I'm open to being disproven. And, you know, again, there's all these studies, and I would love to learn more about it on it. So I'm bringing this up to show you that actually, are human beings rational? That's open for debate.
Okay. I then I fail to see, like, I think humans are generally rational. You think human beings are generally rational. I don't, but you've sort of veered away from the whole idea of sort of how you carry out these punishments and then make restitutions for the wrongs that you've done. Like, why not just not do them in the first place? Except you've got a book which basically says to do this to people. And you're stuck in that thing. You keep sort of accusing me of presuppositions without really finding out what my presuppositions are. Yet I could say, hey, you're making presuppositions that a God is giving an objective morality. If the morality is so objective, why does everybody disagree on it? And who has the objective morality?
Who is disagreeing on it? I mean, like
the Sunnis and Shiites have been fighting for
Shias
1400.
are like, I mean, that's
well,
within
1400.
Islam,
hang on. 1400 years they've been disagreeing, and it really comes down to who inherited the power to interpret the laws from Muhammad. So when he died, basically a sect said the Sunnis said that it was a elective process which elected the people to interpret the laws, and the Shiites said that there were descendants of Muhammad who should interpret the laws. So not only do you not have an objective interpretation of the laws, but Islam can't decide on who should give the interpretation of the laws.
I do want to try to
minority. They're a minority sect like that isn't even relevant. So I don't know why you're using them, and then they also, you know, supposedly don't even believe in the Sahaba and curse them and stuff like that. As well as they think that some of them go as far even to say that Muhammad, you know, Ali actually may have been the prophet, which is like.
So I do want to inject here. As much as we would love to probably talk about, you know, the variations amongst different Muslims, when we were talking about punishments there, you did start talking a little bit. You said something about in the case of homosexuals, which would be a topic that would be related to what's best for society. So let's try to kick it into a discussion more about the societal aspect. So I'll put it back to you, Hussein, because you were about to make a point on that earlier.
Yeah, so I mean, one thing that could be said is like, so most secular humanists probably endorse, the new modern, human rights we keep discovering as it expands to trans and LGBTQIQ stuff. So it'd be interesting to hear why all of a sudden we should just expand these rights, or how it's good for society, or human flourishing, as Mark likes to say. So because the argument could be like, if you're a Kantian, you could say, okay, if we willed all of society to be homosexual, then there would be no longer any human beings or human society, because it would end within a generation. So therefore we should not have any people being gay. Now Islam is a bit more new, says it's a sin, but it does separate public and private life. So it's really weird that a lot of the people, and I'm not saying you're doing this, Mark, but online, they'll have like this very Islamophobic nature of what Islam says. There is hudud punishment, but again, it's like within witnesses, it has to be done in public. It's essentially being separating public and private life. So what you do within your own home is private. Obviously, you should try not to sin, but what you do in public and spreading corruption, that goes on to the atheist comment in a way. You're spreading corruption within the land. So that is where it becomes problematic. And all cultures do this. So all cultures think, for example, France right now just banned the abaya, and they want to, quote unquote, preserve French culture.
Hold it. Now, that's another point you're going on to. You're gish galloping.
I'm not.
You're going on from point to point to point to point. You've gone down to France and sort of what's happening there. Let's address LGBTQI. So a humanist says that all humans are intrinsically bad or good, and there is no, like, we should accept these people for who they are, what they're doing. They're not harming anybody, and I don't see how they're harming. You say they bring corruption to the land. Well, who decides what that is? That's entirely a subjective thing. Who's deciding what corruption is and what corruption is not? It's still just subjective. That just up to who decides, who interprets what the Quran says about it. And we're not discovering these human rights. These human rights have been with us. I mean, in ancient Greek days, there were, say, the Golden Band of Thebes, who were made up of exclusively male homosexual couples, and they happened to, fight for Theban city-state, and in fact defeated the Spartans in battle. So this isn't a new thing that's just swept in the last few years. This is something that's been around for ages, yet oppressed.
I'm not saying that people with these tendencies have never existed. I'm saying that discovering, quote unquote, these human rights and the ever expansion of human rights is something. It's a modern paradigm. I'll ignore the Greek comment, but there's tons of Greek philosophers who argued that homosexual acts are pretty problematic and wanted to ban it as well. So it's again, this kind of goes back to the crux of the thing. So if you agree, secular humanism is in a way subjective, how can you even tell Islamic governments what to do? Or you're saying you shouldn't? So
so if it's subjective, we don't impose ourselves on others. So we don't say, hey, you have to do this.
Oh, cool.
Like Islam generally doesn't.
Yeah.
But I'm saying what is best for society is not Islam. It's every single civilization out there which is run by Sharia law is absolutely horrible places to live. They are brutal places that
Have you ever been to the Middle East?
Yeah. I mean, I must admit it hasn't been for very long, but
so where's this brutal, like, that everyone, like, where's this brutal Sharia law in Tunisia, in Morocco, in Algeria, in Egypt,
in Iran,
in Ethiopia,
where women are currently fighting.
You're selecting
for
three
their
countries, out of the entire Islamic world, and saying this is all Sharia. That's literally what you're doing.
Well, So
So by the
in
way, to mention the goal part, you're mentioning goals
well,
like
hang
Islam.
hang on. So the most populous Muslim country in the world is Indonesia, I believe. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, there's tons of Asian societies as well.
Sure, sure. They're currently sort of having a brutalizing the Papua New Guineans over the border. But the places that you're talking about that are Muslim aren't exactly these paradigms of understanding and compassion like you're portraying them. And I can point to the Islamic countries which are beheading people like Saudi Arabia or cutting hands off thieves and things like that. So the idea that it's just this rare thing is not necessarily the case. And it happens because you happen to have a book which says it is entirely permissible to do so. And you have acknowledged you would mutilate people that you believe, not that you actually know for sure, but you believe have committed a crime.
Right,
and if they object, you will compensate them for their lost.
Sorry, it's a prayer. All right.
Did you need a moment, or you good?
Yeah, can I? Or does Mark have? Because I was gonna in general.
I'm fine.
I need a.
How long do you need there?
No, it's like it takes like 10 minutes. It's not that bad. It was more like in the interest, like how much more time do we have? Like how long is this discussion? Are we almost done with the discussion?
We actually are almost done with the open discussion. Then we're going to whip into the Q&A. So we got about 15 minutes more of the open discussion.
Okay, because if it was gonna end soon, then but if it's 15 minutes and then the questions are always really long, so let me take like a 10-minute, 5-minute break probably.
Okay, yeah, if it's 5 minutes, that's A1. Yeah, that's good. We can we can respect that. And Hussein's going to be right back there. I will switch screens as he pops out. Well, there we go. He just put his video off, everybody. There we go. So we're going to take a little intermission for a minute here while Hussein steps out. Sorry to everybody that will, take the little intermission and respect Hussein here in the space. Glad to see 355 watching now. What are you doing? Do you have fingers? Do you have toes? Do you have skin with heat? Can you hit the like button? That's always appreciated.
I would hope so. I mean, are there any aliens watching? That one might be a fascinating debate.
You're the moderator right now. Look at that. I got to switch things up. There we go. We're all fixed up. Oh, we lost your focus there, Mark. Not in the debate. I mean your camera.
Yeah, no, I'm aware. And
it might have something on it. But see, this is the perfect time for this to happen because I can let James know at the end of this to cut this little piece out and then we'll kick it right back into the debate. But yeah, glad to see everybody hanging out there. Mark's fixing up his camera. If anybody is in the chat and they're not sure what's going on, we're just taking a 5-minute break. Hussein is praying, so that will be just a few minutes. We'll be getting right back to our discussion. There you are.
I haven't been that harsh on it. He's praying. I haven't been that harsh on him. Like I think.
Oh, you had to. You couldn't help it. We'll have to let him know that you said so. You can't make jokes like that without him.
No, I can. What are you talking about?
I guess. I mean, you did. I guess.
I'm an atheist. I can make any jokes about religion that I want. I have that right. Look, and people can joke about humanism and atheists all they want to. That's fine. I get you.
Well, I will take a moment then just to remind everybody in the chat. Hi, Tongue Daddy. That's quite the arm you got there. Is that your arm? I just gotta know. His name's Tongue Daddy, so I wonder what he does in his spare time. Let's see, who else is hanging out? Sabric Dabra. Yeah, I like it. I always like it when Sabra Kadabra's hanging out because for some odd reason, I think maybe it's just because they responded to a lot of like Black Sabbath, Judas Priesty type conversation, but I always see them in the chat and I'm like, that person seems cool. JD on YouTube, glad you're hanging out, buddy. It's always good to see you. Big Bad Mama also in the chat right now, hanging out. I'd love to see it. We are going to be back with you guys in just a few moments, and like I said, I'll try to get to James and cut this out. you want to hear a music solo, no, I don't have any solos right now.
Oh.
I won't put it over to the solo just because if people hear me, whipping through some sick shreds, they might think it's the end of the show. I wouldn't want that. So, just going to remind everybody once again, we're just waiting for Hussein to get back, and we're going to continue on with our discussion. He's taking a little prayer break, and we 100% respect the speakers that are on our show. So once again, hit the like button if you enjoy the neutral platform. Join us in our Discord. Anything, if you're hanging out there, I see you are actually. You just put it in there. Just tagged our Discord. So if you guys have Discord, if you're cool like normies, normal people, check out the link. Let's see here as well. I can also remind everybody about all our wicked perks. So if you can donate $100 US, one-on-one Zoom chat with James, and you can tell him all about how you can't stand seeing my face. All right, Hussein is back. Everybody, welcome back, Hussein. We are going to continue on with the debate. That seemed pretty quick there. I hope you didn't feel rushed. And thank you for being back, Hussein, to have the discussion.
No problem. I heard anyways, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, so in a way I think maybe we agree, Mark. It sounds like you're pretty libertarian in a sense where you're just like, oh, people can do in a way whatever they want. The goal of Islam essentially is like it's a moral goal. It's a self like trying to achieve higher virtues. And like be a part of like obviously the Islamic community and like worship and all that stuff. So if you want to, right, as like a secular humanist, make a treaty, for example, and I don't know if Isa, when you had the debate, talked to you about this, but there is like a whole concept of like Islamic treaties. So for example, and I was going to go to the jizya too, just to move it along because you were asking about that. If you, for example, like as an atheist, wanted to have your little community and you're able to make a treaty, you can live within your community. Jewish people within the Islamic Empire did this, like Christian people did this as well. The thing is like you're not, again, this goes back to the homosexual thing. Almost all sins, right? Like the difference is publicly endorsing and trying to spread something versus doing it within the privacy of your own home. And if, for example, even within Islamic Muslims, I'm sure you've seen like a stark difference between proselytization. So like Christians will like go to mosques and they'll try and convert people. And then like Islamic dawah is really just like posting up somewhere and just people will come and ask questions, but we don't really go out and seek. So there's like a big difference here in between that. So I think like, if anyone is like going out and trying to like find people being gay or something and like spying on them, that's definitely not allowed within Sharia. And then, so to end that one, and did you have anything to say on it before we go?
Yeah, so in Egypt, an atheist was arrested after he had a debate with a Muslim and was basically accused of being disrespectful to the religion. So you brought up an example of people who, in a democracy, they voted in Sharia law. And my question to you would be, how do they vote out Sharia law?
If you guys have more people and want to vote it out, I mean, in a democracy
and
where
Islam will see that as not an attack, because most Islamic countries would see that as an attack on Islam, correct?
Yeah, well, obviously they would.
Yeah, and an attack on Islam
it would be the same thing. I mean, again, maybe not.
But an attack on Islam has that idea that you fight against whoever attacks Islam, correct?
Not. If you think, are you trying to imply that means that I can like make a war with you? Because that's not what it's saying.
No. But what I'm saying is that a lot of the times when people, like in Iran, when the women have problems with the government and the way they're being treated, they have no way to be represented by the government. And the jizya I have a problem with as a humanist, because it is a taxation without representation. You are taxing people living within your boundaries, but they are getting no representation from the government whatsoever. Whereas secular humanists would say, hey, everybody contributing to society should be represented in that society, no matter who they are. And I think that is...
Do illegal immigrants get representation? Or like, obviously they don't in practical real world, but I'm just asking, like,
Right.
do you think illegal immigrants deserve representation because they pay like sales tax in like the US, for example, but they don't have
They do. They had advocates who lobby the government on their behalf.
Yeah, but they can't actively participate in any other way, I should say.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that I mean, it's very, very hard in today's paradigm of, country determination to say, hey, do people who don't sort of who are legally there, who are violating the law, should criminals get and not to say that illegal immigrants are criminals in the same vein as a violent criminal or something like that, but should someone
they're breaking the law,
have representation? And I would probably say no. I don't think somebody that is running some kind of illegal operation within the thingo should get representation. So to be intellectually consistent, I think that somebody who is illegally in that country and breaking the law should get representation. Although I do affirm that they should at least get advocacy on behalf of groups that advocate, that the group should advocate on behalf of them. And I think that is more than reasonable.
Okay, interesting. I just want to know your opinion on it. Okay.
Well, and I think that refugees and immigrants, it's important that they have their basic human rights maintained as well. That if they come here, they should have the inalienable human rights, the right to food, water, safety, security, all of those things that we advocate for rights of.
Where do those basic human rights come from, though?
They come from an understanding of human needs.
But so like in political theory, in the definition of like human rights just comes from the state of nature. And when you analyze the state of nature, they argue that actually those wouldn't be like even your base needs is yes, it's a need, but it's not a human right. Essentially, you just have the life to liberty, pursuit of happiness, per se. That's just in the West or the America per se. But essentially, you just have the life to life, like self-defense, and then that kind of stuff. Like no one owes you food, no one owes you anything. You have to do it yourself.
Well, I do want to throw in, just before you respond there, just hold your thought for 1 second there, Mark. I do want to throw in the monkey wrench to move on. Lastly, since we got around like maybe 7 to 10 minutes of open discussion minus the break time there. Yeah, we would what we would want to move on to once again. I think we're 3 men in room, but we do want to talk about rights for women in our society. So I'll let you respond to what you just heard there, Mark, and then we'll kick it over to Hussein to discuss rights of women as per in the society that they are having here. So once again, hit the like button, everybody, and let's carry on.
Yeah, so we know from sort of medical research and medical studies that we have certain things that we need to be well, and that's the whole idea of human well-being. Somebody that is denied food, denied water, they're not well. So if you believe in the well-being of humans, then there's certain things you have to acknowledge are rights. There's also psychological needs that we all have that we can study this as well. That all people have the right to self-actualization, i.e. become the best version of themselves they can be. We have to have safety and security. A person that does not get safety and security is not a well human. I don't know why this is hard to understand, but if you put somebody in perpetual fear or a perpetual denial of themselves or a perpetual any of these things, they will not be a well human. And we have seen the effect of that psychologically on people. If you isolate people and they don't have a right to community and fellowship, they will not be a well human. So if you care about the well-being of humans, then these are things you have to acknowledge are inalienable rights.
So Mark, when you make the big bucks, so you want to help me self-actualize my dream and fund my race car. Is that what I'm hearing? So you love
No,
self-actualization and
no.
my psychological needs as a fellow human.
Self-actualization is the it's not, if I'm doing it for you, how is it self-actualization?
Well, then why do I owe someone else food?
Why do you
Like,
owe
I'm not
someone else
denying them
food?
food. I'm not denying them food, but they have to go and get it
Right,
themselves.
right. Because if you were starving yourself, wouldn't you want to get food?
Yeah, of course I would want food. I'm starving.
Right. So if you want to live in a society where people get food when they're hungry because you want that, then you have to do it for other people. It's called
There's plenty,
reciprocity.
yeah, but there's plenty of people who think that, and they come to the conclusion that we should still not just give people food for free.
I
So
don't
like,
know who's saying that we
there's
should.
plenty of like libertarian, conservative people, like Republican people, like there's plenty
Are
of
they
people who would
secular
say, I would,
humanists?
of course, I wish I love my fellow human beings. I would love if they all had food like me, but don't take it from me. Don't take my tax money from me. You're
Are they
depriving me of my
secular
money for someone
humanists?
else.
Are they secular humanists?
Well, no, but again, you haven't told me
Well,
why.
no. So they don't believe in the same things I do. Just because I believe that there are inalienable human rights doesn't mean that they believe the same thing. This is the thing. You keep equating all kinds of different people with secular humanism
No, I'm not.
and
I'm not.
leveraging their beliefs onto what I think. Like, why
No.
would you do that? It would be like me, like saying, oh, there's a Buddhist over there who thinks this. Well, I mean, you're not a Buddhist. Why would you
Mark,
even say that?
I'm not. That's not what I'm trying to do. I think you're misunderstanding what I'm trying to do for the audience. So my whole point in the beginning of this was to say that, okay, there's these underlying beliefs that secular humanism has, and I'm showing
Yes.
that those beliefs that they give as a given are not actually a given or true. Okay, that's why I cited those papers given psychology and
What do you mean by
sociology.
true? What do you mean by true? I don't understand what you mean by true, because I don't think there's moral facts, right? So
No, no, no,
saying
no, no,
something
no.
is
You're not saying
true
there's
is a
moral
really weird way to phrase it.
So you're not. I'm not saying. So we agreed on the subjectivity, right? Okay, but you also are saying that that human beings strive to be ethical, right? And I tried to show
Yes.
that isn't actually true. You said human beings strive to be rational. I said that isn't actually true. And then on top of that, when you have this subjectivity, okay, of morality in an atheist framework, okay, you can come to different conclusions. And then we are both agreeing. So I'm just highlighting for the audience. There's these other conclusions, right, that disagree with you, and they have every right as well to disagree. And you're saying you have no reason to say they ought to do what you're wanting anyways. So I'm saying it's like a neutered moral philosophy. There's no reason for me or anyone to follow what you're saying. So it's not a moral philosophy at all. It's just a belief system that you have. It's just the dogma.
No, it's so like just because people try to be rational, I'm not saying they always succeed. So you sort of saying, hey, people are irrational, but that doesn't negate like people trying to be rational, trying to communicate with each other and figure out what is right and what is wrong. They try. I'm not saying they always succeed. So that's just wrong. What you said. No. So you said there's
we'll agree to disagree.
No. You're saying there's no reason to do any of the things that I've advocated. But what I'm saying is that if you care about humans, then there is a reason to do it. It's a subjective reason. It's a stance-dependent reason that you care about humans, or even you care about yourself. Because if your own well-being is reliant on society, then it is in your best interest to make the society as good as possible or as beneficial as possible. So when you say there's no reason to do it, there's no objective reason, but there is reasons that people have. All that we have to have is an empathy for other people and an idea that reciprocity, if you do this thing for me, if I do this thing for someone, there's much more chance that someone will do the same for me. I mean, you can boil it down to driving on the freeway and you let somebody enter your lane in front of you, you just let them come into a crowded lane. If you do that for other people, there's more chance that that behavior will be passed on, and people will do the same for you. It's a very, very basic thing, and it's a part of societies throughout the ages. You just do how the actions that you would like to see in society. And there's reasons for that. So saying there's no reasons, it's like, well, no,
that's an illusion. That's an illusionary reason. So, for example, you were born in the Western West, right? So you may have like this pre-programmed way to behave or way to act or way to think. Someone in China or India can think totally different of you, and that's their flavor of ice cream, like I said. And I'm just saying that they could think that this is what's best for humanity, and then try and impose that as well. But I guess we agree then. So we can go on to women and their role in society.
Okay. So what's women's role in society? Should women be equal in society?
Women, so in the Islamic world, men and women are different. We've had this conversation, and you yourself admitted that women and men are different. So I don't see
that's
problem
obvious. Here. I mean,
so then why would there be equal rules or equal for men and women?
Because they're both humans. Why wouldn't you have equal rights for humans?
Yeah. So, for example, when you talk about like inheritance, right? So in an Islamic society, okay, so we can go to inheritance, right? So in an Islamic society, right, like the men have more obligations, financial obligations, and thus they get more inheritance. Women are going to be automatically covered by brothers, sisters, family. They're going to be covered by inheritance as well as the meher when they're married. It's like a dowry to the women directly. So there is these ways that women are covered, and there's an obligation as well for all of society, for example, to take care of orphans, widows. So there's plenty of examples of how we're supposed to take care of women within the Sharia. And, because I am a man, I would get a little bit more inheritance, thus because I'm going to be taking care of my sisters, I'm going to be taking care of my wife and my sons and daughters, inshallah, if I have any. So
why don't
within an Islamic framework that makes sense, no? And
why don't you just give equally and let people take care of themselves? Like why is the onus on the man to take care of your sisters, for instance? Why can't you just split it evenly and sort of take care of each other?
Yeah, so that was an interesting thing. So that I wanted to talk about. So in Islam, family is an obligation. So you have an obligation and a duty to take care of your family. But it sounds like you're saying that we don't.
Well, I didn't say that. I just said, well, why don't you split evenly and take care of each other? Like, why is it the man that has to take care of the women? Why isn't the woman that gets more and takes care of the man?
Because women don't operate that way.
What do you mean?
Because psychologically, like sociologically, like women never behave that way. What do you mean? There's plenty of
what are you talking about? Like, do you know what a matriarch is?
Come on. There's been like
I'm being serious. Matriarchal behavior runs throughout all of human society. A lot of families are run by women. Like, I'm not saying that's an exclusive thing, but I'm saying that the matriarch, the grandmother that sort of is very, very matriarchal does exist. That stereotype exists for a reason, because these women do exist.
Women have no power within Islamic society? Because they definitely do.
No, I never said that. I'm saying they don't have equal power.
I'm just asking.
I'm saying that they don't have equal power. Like, for instance, that sort of if you implement Sharia law, it's made up by, well, you're a Sunni, so it would be clerics. The elected clerics, right? That would be the ones in power making the interpretation of Sharia, right?
From them, I'm ignorant of this, but from what I understand, that's right. So
so can women take these positions and contribute to the countries and implement policies and have control over their own lives? Do they get representation?
Do they get representation? To be honest, I'm fairly ignorant on it. I mean, I know there's Islamic societies
Okay.
currently where women do have representation and they actively participate within the democracy. So, like for example, when I visited Tunisia, there was plenty of women participating in the democracy who were
Well,
Muslim.
that's democracy,
So
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But I'm talking more about the Sharia law countries, you know.
Well, they have aspects of Sharia, yeah.
Well, aspects, but they're not sort of, yeah. So, you know, in the countries that are theocracies, where sort of Islam's taken to its logical conclusion, and you have the Sharia law as being the dominant law and the parliamentary system for the government. As far as I know, women can't become clerics.
I mean, there's examples of so Aisha, um, peace be upon her.
I'm not sure if you want to discuss that topic.
No. I don't want to bring up the other part of it, which I'm
Well,
sure
yeah, I'm
that's a
sure
whole
you're
another.
very well aware at her age, you know, like
My point is that the men, the Suhaba, like the companions, uh, did go to Aisha for hadith as well as knowledge about Muhammad, peace be upon him. So she is in a way in a position to teach all these men. So it's not like this is unheard of, and there is, going to be debate within this. In a general rule, and again, rules are for general rules, right? There's going to be
right.
outliers, and Aisha is one of them, and that's the point. When you have rules within any society, that's what rules are for. There's just the general guideline, and this is how people ought to behave. And then there may be outliers. That's fine.
Yeah, so I don't see women as being treated equally in Islamic society.
Yeah,
There
because men
seem
and
to
women
be
aren't equal. I told you that.
yeah, so that's something that I do have a problem with. If you are sort of the contribution that women have made to our society, in fact, the only winner of the Nobel Prize, 2 Nobel Prizes in different categories, was a woman. There's sort of women like Ada Lovelace who invented the first algorithm. There's all kinds of people that have contributed to our society, and I
Well,
don't hold against them any kind of inherent sort of way that they were born. Just like Alan Turing is behind the modern computer, and he was a homosexual, and there is no reason why he could not proudly say that he was a homosexual and one of the greatest people that have contributed to our society. And
so
the only reason why Islam says these things is because the book says it, and that's the interpretation.
so if you believe that women and men are not equal, all right, and we could use an example.
No,
Um,
hold on. I said men, women aren't the same. Like, what is it that you sort of say, well, they're not the same? That means that we have to treat them differently as far as sort of rights and sort of power is concerned.
Well, yeah. So, for example, majority of women, if given the option, would not go to work, and there's an actual statistic on that. It's like 80% of
I think a
women.
majority of men would not go to work as well. I mean, like seriously, what are you talking about? Like there's been companies run by women. There's been countries run by women. I mean,
No,
just in
no, I never said that doesn't exist. I never said that doesn't exist. But there's a reason there's a minority representation of women because most women, don't want to do that. Why is there less women in the debate sphere? It's because most don't want to do these things. So I'm accepting reality and saying that women and men are different, and women and men have different likes, dislikes, ways to behave in general, and that's what these rules are for.
Well, I think that I would like to see more women in the debate sphere. I know of a few women in the debate sphere. In fact, there's one coming up that's Godless Girl versus, I can't remember who it was, a vegan person. So there's definitely women out there who do participate in debate. And I more than encourage more women to get into it. I said to people before, I think it's sad that there are less women involved in the debate sphere. It may be perception of them that is the problem. They may be seen as argumentative or sort of not subservient enough if they do participate in sort of vigorous debate kind of thing, which is a problem because that's just a perception problem. I have heard this thing of like when women are more this way or that way. I still don't understand why women should have sort of a lesser role in society just because they are different than men. I don't understand.
You could argue they have a more important role. I mean, and there's Muslim clerics, right, and imams who do make this. They actually say in some ways Muslim women have the most important role because they are raising future generations and they're more suited to that in a way. And there's plenty of secular atheist red pill people who have made this argument as well, is that women just naturally are more nurturing and better parental figures. They're more emotionally developed than men. And so it's perfectly reasonable that God knows us and knows how we are, and then sees that the majority of women are better at that and better suited and enjoy that as well. Majority of women want to be mothers, for example. And so, yeah, it's prescribing that for women if they do that. There's plenty of women within Islamic history who didn't marry and they had small businesses. There's plenty. I know a Muslim woman, her and her husband opened up a coffee shop. I mean, like she's not breaking Sharia right now. No one's gonna break down her door and kill her for owning a business or something. Like,
well, not in the US, sure.
No, in the Middle East too. Like,
okay. Yeah, no, I get that. I get that. But there still is that power imbalance where women are told to be subservient to men, to their husbands. And the verses that, you basically, if a woman is not obedient, there is things to do to her to get her to be obedient. It's not just that it sort of says lightly beating, and we can argue over what the term actually means and how it's been interpreted. But the whole point is that verse clearly says they're to be obedient to the men.
Yeah, within familiar dynamic, yeah. So essentially it's saying that like men lead the household, which is generally true. And then women can rule the family and the house. So like, yeah, that's been generally true throughout human history. So if it's in line with, again, most of what Islam says seems to align with the reality of the world. And then that's why I'm saying like the contrast is that I think secular humanism does not. But I mean, obviously you're going to disagree. So,
well, yeah, appealing to human history is a really, really bad mistake because slavery has been prevalent through human history. Warring upon your neighbors has been prevalent in human history. All these things have been prevalent in human history. Just appealing to history to say, hey, we've always done it like that is antithetical to what I'm saying. As we find out things are bad for society, we generally change them. And this is the problem with Islam. Because it's prescribed in this book as some ultimate truth, you have no flexibility to change when it's demonstrated that is actually bad for society. So
I mean, that I want to argue that's true when there's literally I think the word is ijtila, like there's debate like among scholars on these issues. So there is for example, like being kind to your parents. There's no like debate, right? There's certain thing like usury is wrong, like loans are bad. Like there's no debate there, right? So like there's plenty of things that are not up for debate and there's things that are up for debate. So, and like Sharia includes many things that for some reason no one ever focuses on. So like me being courteous to you because you're being courteous to me is a part of Sharia. But if you push the boundaries too far, then obviously I should not be okay with that. And that's essentially like, giving what you're getting, right? So that's pretty normal within human beings,
sure,
natural predisposition. So
yeah, and like I don't think we need Sharia to say, hey, if you treat me with the respect I treat you with the respect. Sharia isn't needed for that. You don't need somebody to tell you. I generally try to treat everybody well, or at least as well as I can. If Sharia is, and the thing we said, there's tons of debate over all of these things. I get you, but it hardly speaks to something objective. Like even if there is an Allah and he's got objective morality, you guys obviously don't have access to it because you're all arguing over what it is. This is the whole point. Like, you're sort of saying, hey, this is better because we've got objective morality. And then you're arguing all the time over what it actually is that is objective. You'll claim to have objective morality. You can't show that you actually do.
I mean, within Sunni Islam, there's tons of consensus. So I would disagree. I mean, there's literally all the schools of thoughts agree essentially on like the majority of items within Sharia. So there's a majority consensus. A lot of the times, like, new things will happen, and yes, there'll be debate on how Islam should handle it. So, for example, like social media, debating even on certain things is for some reason weirdly debated right now within like Islamic Twitter and stuff like that. But it doesn't make any sense because the Prophet, peace be upon him, debated. So it doesn't. He debated atheists. So I don't see the issue here. And again, there's like no compulsion in religion. So if you don't want to be religious, then that's fine. But the point is,
just a tax.
So,
all right. Well, I think what we've done there is we've gotten a lot of the, I think a lot of really deep ideas out here and a lot of good surface ideas as well that we could launch into all kinds of really gravy discussions. So I hope everybody's enjoyed the open discussion. We are going to kick into the Q&A now. So a big round of virtual applause to Hussein and Mark Reid for being here. Let's get into that Q&A, everybody. And just a reminder, if you have a question for one of our speakers, turn it into a super chat and we will read it for sure. We do want to respect our speakers' time. So, if anybody needs to use the washroom or anything, you just let me know. All right. So, Big Fang, Flying Wayne, $5. Thanks for being here again, buddy. Ripping Band-Aid Off. Is a 10-year-old wife holier than a 9-year-old wife? Don't get cheeky, Christians. Mary was 12.
I don't think that applies to any of us. So, it's probably a Muslim.
They're probably
trying to be
talking
cheeky
about
with Christians, yeah.
All right, let's carry on there. Thanks.
No,
comment.
I think both of them are really wrong and just completely immoral.
Well, then
I don't think minors can give any kind of consent. If
a minor
indeed,
is a.
Well, just let me finish, Muhammad.
Okay.
So if indeed Muhammad did marry a 9-year-old, that is completely and utterly immoral.
So that's a fallacy of presentism, like the modern age of consent laws. They're modern laws. 18 is a newfound subjective value, and it's arbitrary by atheist standards even. So I've talked about this before, but if you believe in like a philosophical naturalism, the only thing that would matter is essentially puberty. So whenever a girl or a guy hits puberty, they are ready to, in a liberal worldview, just have sex. In a traditional worldview, get married. So I don't see how that's problematic, even though, ironically, Islam does acknowledge mental preparedness, essentially. So you have to be mentally prepared and physically ready. So, and then, all parties have to agree. So it seems pretty reasonable to me.
Okay, so that's hilarious because presentism is necessarily moral relativism. It's saying we shouldn't judge people in the past by doing something because morality is relative to the time and they didn't know any better. So you've just outlined one of the hang on. You've just outlined one of the principles of moral relativism to sort of make your case.
No, I'm not.
It's not about biological thing. It's about informed consent. And somebody that young cannot give informed consent because they cannot understand the complete consequences of what they do. So the whole idea that you'll sort of sit here and go, well, materialism says if they're beyond puberty, it's fine. That's not what materialism says. It's also a psychological element to it, which means that even if their body is physically ready, they may not be, which is really weird that you're sort of saying, hey, as long as they're ready. And that's what you appear to say because you sort of danced around the subject. I want to ask you, is that moral or not moral?
Yeah, in context of that society, yes, it's moral. I told you that. I literally said, if a 10-year-old back then, right, is essentially an adult. They're treated as if they're an adult, and they're given the responsibility of an adult. And again, there's psychological papers on this. If you give people more responsibility, they mature faster. So, for example, I have a friend. His parents are Hispanic, and they're from Mexico. And in Mexico, he had to help his family's business since 6 years old. And then at 10-year-old, he actually assumed the role essentially of the father, and then took care of the children, and then actually took care of the business. That 10-year-old individualistically is totally different than a 10-year-old in the West, or now in even Arabia. And that's why like Arab countries and Islamic countries have shifted the age of consent as well, but that is entirely consistent with Sharia. They're not.
Yeah, that's called
Yeah.
parentification, and we know that that isn't helpful for the child to have those responsibilities of a parent loaded upon them. It isn't healthy at all.
Yes,
There's
giving
a lot
responsibility to children is bad. Don't ever let them grow up, guys.
No, it's to give them roles and responsibilities that are appropriate for their age and their development. So increasing the amount of responsibilities as they grow to be able to cognitively handle these responsibilities is a good thing. Loading them up with excess responsibilities of a parent when they're too young is a bad thing. And you will find somebody that is unable to tap into that inner child a lot of the time, that sort of makes a healthy human being. So this sort of thing that you've described isn't actually healthy itself, but you're saying it's moral for the time. I don't see how.
That was our first super chat. So that had a
Only
lot.
one.
That had a lot of thoughts there. A big thing, a flying Wayne. We thought we weren't going to get too much there, but hopefully you're satisfied with that. Thanks for being here. Keep those super chats coming in. I know you're curious about what our speakers think. So if you want to know what they think about what you're thinking about, you got to ask that question, fellas. Come on now. Peeps, get that question in there, hit that like button, and let's continue on. All right. Manga Fan Dan, $5. Cat Stevens converted to Islam. Knowing that, how can you say secular humanism contributes more to society than Islam? Ooh, baby, it's a
Well,
wild
it
world.
probably doesn't, because there's not as much secular humanists as Islamic people. It is the fastest religion growing by birth, I believe. I think Pentecostalism is the fastest growing by conversion, but Islam is the fastest growing by birth. I'm here to argue that sort of secular humanism is better for society. That doesn't mean to say that we're an overwhelming majority in countries that can sort of impose our ideas upon society. I think that that's sort of a strength of secular humanism, and that it's compatible with anybody that wants the best for humanity and is acting in the best for humanity. That's what I'm saying. When you say more of what, it would be my question.
All right. Any thoughts over there, Hussein? You want to carry on?
Morals don't exist per atheism, so I don't know what to say on it. I don't think it
That's not true.
All right.
I mean,
That was a
under
declaration there.
Camus, it doesn't exist. Under Nietzsche, it doesn't
Yeah,
exist.
so
All right, let's let Mark respond to that.
I don't think Hussein's got any compulsion to lie, because of course moral. I mean, when you say exist, sort of what are you sort of saying? Because I just outlined a whole bunch of morals. So
But they're
so
illusionary.
They're not illusionary.
Okay.
They might be a construct. That's like saying laws don't exist. Well, that's great. Go out there and steal a car and see how far you get.
Well, I thought gender doesn't exist. It's a construct, right?
Well, it's just because it's a construct doesn't mean it doesn't have.
So morals don't
certain
exist. It's
things
just
you
a
can't-
construct.
Well, yes, but so's the law. Does the law exist?
I mean, it exists, but it's fake.
It exists. Yeah, it exists.
Yeah.
Like
So that's why Nietzsche says
existence is a very fuzzy
self-actualization
concept.
is the
But
only
I
truth.
hold. Hang on. Well, let me finish. I think it was my turn to talk. Strangely
Yeah,
enough,
go for it. Go
wasn't
for
it?
it. Sorry.
Yeah. So when we're
I'll
talking
let
about
you wrap up.
existence, like it is very sort of nebulous what existence actually means, but usually it means that something has a causal relationship. So if you break the law exists because if you break the law, there are consequences. It has a causal relationship with you. Again, morality exists because it has a causal relationship. If you break morality, then there is these things that happen. So yeah, the morality exists. I mean, it might not be 100% objective, but neither is the law.
Okay. So I mean, I think we agree then. Because but you're saying it exists, but it doesn't. I mean, like the implication of it being subjective is it's not real. So you should just be a nihilist, like a moral nihilist. I don't know why you want.
No, it's subjective. It just means stance dependent. That's all.
Yeah, so it's fake though. It doesn't exist.
What do you mean it's fake?
But it's fine. We're never gonna agree on this.
It's
okay.
just subjective and intersubjective. So like sort of we can create these things in our societies that sort of have constraints upon society. Like the law, like you can create a bunch of laws in society and they have constraints upon people and show people if they violate it, this will happen kind of thing. But you wouldn't say the law is fake. Like it's just not, it's a nonsensical thing to say.
Well, that's what, the atheism is the absurdity of life per Camus. So when you have atheism, life is actually absurd because it is meaningless. So, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, you should really look into him. He's a great philosopher for atheism.
Yeah, you don't, like, this is so weird. Like, who says that life's meaningless to atheists? Just because we create our own
he's saying the
meaning.
logical conclusion of God not existing is that it is absurd. Look into absurdity.
Yeah, well, I mean, then that is a silly thing to say because it's not absurd. It's not meaningless. Like there's so many atheists out there living their lives with meaning, and you're sort of trying to say, well, it's all meaningless.
No, they make
you don't
meaning.
even know
it's fake,
what it's about.
All right.
Yeah, they make meaning,
fake.
but it's fake. They make meaning, but it's fake.
So you found a book written by some guy that tells you your life has this meaning they put on you, and you think that's real.
No, it's not just that I found that book. It's that there's arguments for God's existence as well.
And there's arguments against God's existence as well.
Yeah, sure. And I'm just saying the logical conclusion, if God doesn't exist, per Camus, and I agree with him, is that life is absurd and meaningless. And that's all I was saying.
Strange.
And morality is
absurd. A lot of
and
people live their lives not in absurdity and with meaning that don't believe in God.
Well, yeah, and that's why I think atheists don't actually believe in what they say. They don't believe in what they're selling.
Well, I mean,
they don't truly believe what they're selling.
All right, we're going to give the last word to Mark.
I could turn around and go, you don't really believe in God. You're just pretending to try and make you feel like, what is the logical outcome of this? If we want to say, hey, I can tell what you think. Do you know that mind reading, thinking that you know what somebody else is thinking, is actually a sign of mental illness? Because you cannot know what other people are thinking. You're just deluding yourself into saying, well, I know what you're thinking.
No.
Why? No. It's my turn to talk. And why? Because you think that is it absurd if you don't have God? Well, that's great for your opinion. That's just your opinion. And there's many atheists out there having very meaningful lives and enjoying their lives and having something more to look forward to in their lives, which completely debunks your entire position. So in order to cope with it, you say, well, they don't really not believe in God, which is just, I mean, the absurd thing is you thinking you can know what other people think and know. That's the absurd thing.
All right, I'm gonna have to let Hussein respond.
Mark, I'm saying that these are the logical conclusions of atheism that atheists, even like people like Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris, all other atheists, Albert Camus, they all agree. So for example, you can say, oh, so the logical conclusion of atheism is that you have no free will. But many atheists operate as if there is free will. Same thing with morality. So many atheists will fully agree, well, actually, there's just brutal nihilism and morality is fake, but we're going to operate as if it's real. So that's what I meant by the comment, like they're not buying what they're selling. Obviously, you disagree. There's other atheists who think there is objective morality, even without God, for example. So I was just throwing in my 2 cents, man.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're completely and utterly wrong, because it's the hard determinists that think that choices are already played out and you're just rationalizing the choices afterwards, which I'm actually a sort of compatibilist, so I don't agree with that. So you're leveraging sort of what other people believe and putting it on me. It's
I'm not putting it on
nihilists that
you.
have no. It's my turn to talk. It's nihilism that says that there is no meaning and that life is pointless and absurd. It's not atheism. Atheism doesn't have a logical conclusion, because atheism is simply the position that no God exists. You're basically taking these things from atheists that are nihilist and hard determinists and sort of people that believe in objective morality, and applying it broadcloth across atheism, which atheists are all different. But the only thing we have in common is that we do not believe that a God exists. But you'll sit here and say, well, I don't believe that because the ultimate conclusion is absurdity. It's just it's such a nonsense position to take, that you think that the logical conclusion to atheism is nihilism, when there are so many atheists out there who have logically thought it through. And it's not nihilism. If I was a nihilism, I wouldn't care about morality. If I was a nihilist, I wouldn't care, but I do deeply.
Mark,
No. I get the
saying...
last word. That's the thing. Like, the question was for me.
Well, we can move along there. I don't.
Yeah, that's fine.
I don't mind having a bit of back and forth on the questions, but just to verify, I guess before we continue on, Hussein, do you have any time constraints this evening for having the back and forth?
Well, I was supposed to leave pretty shortly, but we can do 10 more minutes then, if that's cool, or just try and get through the questions.
Yeah, all right. I'll set a 1 minute timer to get through these, and we'll keep them to the side that they're asked for. So, Cool Doggo for $20. Hussein, which countries fit your definition of an Islamic society, and should they be imitated by others? And they end it with justice for Khashoggi.
I don't know what that justice for Khashoggi is referencing, but I don't think any country is practicing Sharia law, and there's actually a prophecy on that, about how the Ummah will be oppressed because of they're not acting in accordance with Sharia. So,
all right, I'll reset the timer.
Khashoggi.
Oh, go ahead. We still have 40 seconds.
I did have to look this up, but he was a columnist in the Middle East and Washington Post.
The one that died by Saudi Arabia or something?
Yeah. He was assassinated. I believe it was in England, wasn't it? In front of an embassy. That happened. It was a very, very brutal kind of. He entered the Saudi Arabian consulate and never came out.
Yeah, I don't know what he wants me to say to that. That's a political thing, and it's not really an Islamic thing. So
yeah, let's move on from there, everybody. All right, so XXWLZXX for $2 says, is child marriage objectively moral?
No.
No, because I believe they have to be gone through puberty, so they're no longer a child. I don't. Yes, of course it's immoral. What does he want?
What age is that? What's the minimum age of that? I think that a minor going into marriage is immoral. What age would you say?
Okay, so minor. So what's a minor?
So anyone under 18.
You define a child. What is underage? In Germany it's 14, and in other nations.
Speed it along, he just said underage.
Hold on.
So for him,
I thought we're not even doing back and forth, by the way, because I need to go.
That's all right. That's all right. So yeah, we'll carry on. That's all right. So I think we got our ideas out there, and everybody can figure out what we think there. Mike T for $1.99. Muhammad struck Aisha. Not sure if that's more of a declaration. Nah.
Yeah, it's a declaration and it's false. They literally talk about it. It's just he said, do you doubt me? And then pressed his hand on her sternum. That's not a strike. I don't know what he's talking about. That's just talking.
All right.
Yeah.
We can carry on if
Okay.
that's fine. And when I said nah, I wasn't mocking you. I was just being a character. All right, let's carry on.
Oh, you're good.
XXWLZXX strikes again, saying female circumcision is in the Hadith. It's mandatory. Ooh, what do we think of that? Any thoughts there
Certainly
on
is
that?
in the Hadith, yeah.
I've never heard that.
All right, well, XX, if you want to put in another super chat and reference what it is that you're talking about, maybe we can get down that path. I think Mark is
So
checking out
senior
something right
Muslim
now.
religious authorities agree that female FGM is neither required nor prohibited by Islam. The Quran does not mention it at all, or male circumcision. So I don't know what he wants.
Well, they did say,
And then literally the
yeah.
authenticity of these hadiths has been questioned by multiple jurors. So I don't know what he wants.
All right. Yeah, I was gonna say, I think it was
It's
specifically
like a quick
that,
Google search for these Islamophobes.
yeah, I did want to clarify that. Yeah, he did say Hadith. So you hear Hussein's thoughts on what he thinks of that. Let's carry on. Mike T, a female. So they're saying the opposite. Mike T says female mutilation is not a part of Islam. All right.
Well,
So
it is in the Hadith. It depends on sort of, because the Hadiths were people's basically their biographies of the life of Muhammad, right? So they were sort of other people's interpretations, correct?
Yeah.
all right. Well, we can carry on from there. It sounds like we had a yep there.
Mark, have
And
you read the Quran then? Have you read it? Have you read any
I've read part of it, yeah.
Oh, cool. Just curious.
all right. Well, let's carry on. XXWLZXX. Oh my. I'm just going to call you XX from now on. $5. Does Hussein not see the irony in saying there is a debate about these issues while simultaneously saying they have objective morality?
No, I don't see it as ironic. I mean, I literally, the whole debate, Mark didn't talk about that, and I explained why. So,
Well, I think that even if there is some sort of objective morality from a God, they don't have access to it. I mean, the God isn't talking to anybody directly. So you've got sort of one interpretation, which is sort of Muhammad's interpretation of what God was saying. And then you've got another interpretation through the scribe that wrote it down. And you've got a third interpretation of the person that's reading it out of the Quran. So even if there is some kind of objective morality, they don't have access to it. And I don't think there is. I mean, it'd be nice if the universe had objective morality. I just don't think it exists.
All right.
Okay.
We'll give the last word to Hussein there.
well, so if God is speaking through the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, then yeah, it would be objective. There's been lots of debate from both atheists and Christians alike on the Quran's validity and if it's been changed, and they can definitely trace it back to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So I don't think that's been covered already. And so if it did come from God and it can be traced back to him and it hasn't been changed, then I think it's a pretty good safe bet. You can find ways to behave there. And there's also, to describe in secular terms, like a lot of virtue ethics within Islam. And there's, tons of things like Imam al-Ghazali talks about that, and killing your ego, and these are the ways to be a proper Muslim and achieve God consciousness, and but they're just looking at it from this very skewed lens, if you will.
This
I
one
think they should
coming
do some
in.
more research.
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought you were done there. This one coming in from Big Bad Mama, $5. Hussein, you define objective morality with your intuition instead of observation and measurement. Why is your intuition true for other humans? Any thoughts there on that one?
Yeah, I mean, so the majority of humanity believes in a God. These moral intuitions, there's the irony here is I believe, if I'm not mistaken, humanism literally prescribes like the main point of it is that God gave us these moral intuitions, and through them we can act justly and morally. So I find it quite ironic then. So
well, that would be theistic humanism, not secular humanism.
yeah, of course,
I don't think that sort of secular humanism more deals with the analysis of rationality and science and utilitarianism than any kind of moral intuitions. Moral intuitions can be really useful. Intuitions in general can be useful if decisions need to be made quickly.
Mark, can you know
5 seconds.
consequences? Can you know consequences?
Oh, go ahead.
Because if you can't know the consequences of your actions, then utilitarianism is like a flawed ideology.
All right, we'll let you ask that question, and 30
so
seconds.
Inductively, you can sort of gather what
guess.
It's not a guess, it's induction. It's saying, hey, if these things caused this before, they'll probably cause the same thing in future. Induction is not a guess. I mean, come on. For a start, ad populum, most people are religious in ad populum. And secondly, moral intuitions can be wrong. They're not a particularly reliable way to decide whether something is right or wrong. They're just a feeling, a gut feeling.
Okay.
All right. Let's carry on from there, everybody. XX asks again, thanks for being here in your super chats. We appreciate those.
Is this the only guy?
No, there's lots of other people.
No,
but
that was Big Bad Mama. Hi, Big Bad Mama.
yeah, Big Bad Mama is
I
hanging
remember
out.
her from your stream, I think, Mark.
Yeah, I think she was hanging out.
I like BBM. Yeah.
BBM. That sounds like a category on... Anyways, XXW asks again, why does Hussein think Muslims have objective morality? There are literally thousands of different interpretations of both Islamic law and theology.
This would be like a whole nother thing I'd have to prepare, but essentially, like, Christianity is paganism. It believes in a triune God. So it's like ruled out by like most, like the necessary being argument, like the argument of contingency. Like there's a bunch of things that talk about how, Judaism would be problematic in that as well. So that's ruled out. They believe in essentially like a weak God that they can debate and surpass. So they're not actually like subservient to the ultimate being. So if you believe in an ultimate creator God, then you would obviously in the hierarchy be subordinate to him. It's genderless. I'm just using him, But yeah, so there's like problems with all these major religions, like paganism in general, like monkey gods, stuff like that. You're just believing in an animalism and like you're justifying like Zeus like raped people. Like there's tons of problematic within like these pagan beliefs. So.
All right, well, let's carry on from there. Leo Whitmer says, I got a question for Mark. Do you think if God was real, that would make morality objective? And if you can give an answer in an American accent.
I generally don't do accents. I'm terrible at accents, but I'll give it a try just because it was a super chat.
Oh, no, Mark.
This is going to be terrible. I'm bad at accents. I hate this super chatter so much. Like, no, you're fine. You're good. So if a god had a American accent, no, if a god was real, would morality be objective? No, it would still be subjective and just the will of the god. I think I'm doing something between Texas and Alabama right now. I don't know what I'm doing. No, it would still be subjective. It would just be the God that would be the stance that sort of had that stance kind of thing. This would lead to sort of a might makes right kind of moral system where just the one with the most power. You could appeal to God's nature as being morality. Like you could say, hey, it's not their decision, but rather it's the nature of God that provides morality. But then you've got a problem that God wouldn't have control over his own morality if he couldn't decide that it is different. So there's a whole load of problems down that route as well. So I don't think
10 seconds.
Morality is objective, even if it does come from a God's will, because it's still subjective.
You almost broke Mark there, Leo, trying to do the
character.
American accent. You may as
I
well
know.
have just gone full on like
Can you rate it out of 10? Can you rate it out of 10?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mark. It was bad. But I
No,
was
no,
gonna say
no,
you
He's
have to
not.
work. You
He's
have
not good, but
you,
US are US.
you could have.
Okay.
You should have just went full on. Like think of the most drawly country song that you can think of, and then you would have had something a little bit more like that. That would have been
Give
like
it some twang.
you give it
Look,
some twang. You would have been better off with the like super
For a Canadian,
southern.
he does it well.
Yeah, I was gonna say I do a few, but I'm not gonna get into that tonight. All right, so XX asks us again: atheist community, does apostasy equal death?
Apostasy would be leaving their religion, so they're not apostates if they were never.
Oh, was that for atheist community?
No. Sorry, I have to clarify. They said atheist community ? Question mark? Question mark. So I think you might have said that, Hussein, at some point in the debate, saying that there's an atheist community.
Oh
and
yeah.
they're
Like
calling
like
that to question.
modern Islamic. So there's like a modern Islamic jurist, and they talk about how essentially they've made treaties with secular governments, and so they have to honor these treaties essentially, and then they can't. And Islam does talk about that, like what other people do within their land is totally fine. So for example, like a Muslim emissary met the Vikings, and he literally had to watch like a human sacrifice and like a bunch of other pagan stuff. He didn't just like whip out his sword and start killing them. It's because they had a treaty within that government. So what they do within their own lands is up to them. So that's pretty much in a way consistent with liberal modern political worldview. Does the U.S. follow that? No, but
All right.
But I think that if somebody is Muslim and leaves Islam and is very vocal in their opposition to Islam, then the penalty for that is death.
All right, 10
yeah,
seconds.
it can
there,
be.
Hussein?
Yeah, it can be. Sure.
All right, you didn't need all 10 seconds. Let's carry on, everybody. And thank you for being here. Thank you for your super chats. XX says once again, nice haircut, Ryan. Shink. Thank you. I just got it yesterday because I was doing a rock show, and I might upload a few of those videos later. Dr. Dino says, Hussein, what can Islam provide that any other Abrahamic faith could not? And why should any non-Muslim want it above their own proposed system?
Why should Islam be over other Abrahamic faiths? Well, so I mean, I tried to explain how like there's plenty of arguments on this that you could research that like if a God did exist, Muhammad Ali from the Muslim Lantern has a lot of these discussions online. He's very interesting. So if you're interested, I would check him out, the Muslim Lantern. He's really good. He essentially talks about how like with people who are agnostic or atheists, well, why should I choose Islam over all other religions? And he does like a formulaic breakdown about how, if a creator God existed, how Islam is the only one that's in congruence with that and the implications of that versus other faiths where they limit God's capacity in some way. So for example, like Christianity says that, God is all merciful, but the only way he can forgive you is by making a son and then doing blood sacrifice on him, which is irrational, and it doesn't make sense with an all merciful God. So Islam says, well, no, God is just all merciful and he can forgive you. That's it. So there's plenty of examples of it. So
all right, let's carry on from there. Glad to see you.
I have to pray, so if we can like end it in 5 more minutes, just to like be at 8 on the dot or whatever.
We'll try to carry on here. We got quite a few, but let's keep them quick. Dr. Dino asks again, and thanks for being here, Dr. Dino. Hopefully you're having an after show. I'll join you. No problems there. Why should an atheist be subject to your religion?
Like why they should be subject to my religion? 'Cause, I mean, I did this argument with Aaron Robb, but like an atheist would be better under an Islamic country than the whole society being under an atheist country. So, and there's plenty of examples I've given where like it's better for family. Really, people under a religious society are less likely to abuse drugs. Like they get better grades. Like blah 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 blah. So
All right. We can carry on
Actually,
from
there's a
there.
number of atheistic countries out there. There's a lot of secular countries, mostly like
5
Japan,
seconds.
the Scandinavian countries, things like that. And they do very well. In fact, they're things like education, their happiness index is higher than most Islamic countries. So that's patently untrue.
All right, close us out there, Hussein. 10 seconds.
I mean, I would critique the happiness survey. It actually has a liberal bias. So I was actually going to do a video on that, where the liberal bias of the happiness index, it doesn't actually talk about any other values than liberal values. Inherently, there's also like problems with like the liberal Western hegemony. They're becoming more unhappy because essentially they only focus on material goods. So if you only focus, and there's again psychological papers on this as well, you can look into why materialism is making you unhappy. So it's clear that just focusing on the world here, or the dunya in Islam, it doesn't make anyone happy. So
All right. Let's carry on from there. I'm trying to speed it along for you there, Hussein, but we do have quite a few more super chats. So I'm going to try to remind you when you're getting a little over time. Don't mind me. No disrespect. So Awesome Clips says, what is this other part about Aisha? I think we kind of touched on that.
yeah, we touched on it on it like
Pretty much, yeah.
I think we did talk about it. So, Awesome Lawson, if you want to go back, you can find that. Ember asks, thanks, Ember, for being here. Always cool to see you hanging out there. Love hosting you, buddy. Cheers. Hussein, what role for non-binary and intersex folks? 1 minute there, Hussein.
This is like a whole discussion in and of itself, but there's plenty of papers on how like essentially it's gender dysphoria, and so like obviously I would hope people get therapy on it, and come to terms with the gender they were born, because it's easier in life to accept things the way that the world is, right, than in some ways how like it ought to be, which is a problem with leftism in general. So, and like you know, leftist social values, if you will.
All right, let's carry on from there. XX asks us again for 10. The fact that there are disparities in men and women doesn't mean you should enforce those disparities via law. All men are not better than all women at everything. Let people arrange their own lives.
Okay, I don't know what they mean by that, because in a lot of ways, like Islam is pretty libertarianish. So like again, in many Islamic societies, like women do go and pursue jobs. I mean, like in careers and education, and like if they just want to point to like Afghanistan or something, which like all we're getting is Western biased sources. I mean, that's the only country that's like banning women from all public life. So I don't, yeah.
All right. Excellent. Well, we'll carry on. Rinalus asks, for Mark, are you technically agnostic or atheist? And why?
Atheist. Oh, it's because I believe no God exists, and I have sort of some, it's a provisional belief based upon my understanding of how minds work. Minds don't seem to have any kind of basis without some kind of physical material. But if you can show me a mind without a brain, I'd change that provisional belief. But I, in fact, believe no gods exist.
All right. Well, you heard it here, everybody. Mark Reid believes no God exists. So if you want to ever have a debate with somebody on hard atheism, I think Mark would be willing to take up the mantle. Nara asks, why is modern day debate allowing Hussein to advocate for child SA? Disgusting, they say.
When did I advocate for that?
We can move on from there, because that seems pretty. We can get into some TOS.
Yeah, follow
stuff.
the local laws, please. You know, I don't know what you want. I'm not advocating any of the things that they believe. So
all right,
it's also 8 o'clock. So
all right, let's carry on. Hussein, do you believe in the abstract from Renalis?
I don't know what that is. How do you spell that? I would like to look it up though. I'm not like unwilling to read stuff.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to define abstract either, I guess.
Wait,
I just
abstract,
think of something
ABASTRACT. Is it like abstractum or what is it?
ABSTRACT. It's like something out of like, I guess, the ordinary, like abstract art is like my usual go-to,
Oh,
Well,
they're just
like
asking about like
outside
abstract art.
of the idea of
no,
like
no, no. They're talking
normal.
about abstracta. They're talking about abstract things versus concrete things.
Yeah, I didn't
So
want to
you have
define it.
phenomena. You have phenomena, which is the physical things, the actual concrete things in reality, and you have abstracta, which are these mental constructs kind of thing.
More like an imaginary thing. So they're asking, Hussein, do you believe in the abstract?
New ideas are coming from by considering the common features of several objects or features of dictionaries.
He's checking it out, everybody.
To be honest,
He's doing you a service.
and I'm not even sure I'm looking at the correct thing, but I have no idea. I can't tell you.
Well, thanks for taking the time to look it up, Hussein.
that, man.
I know that you're running low on time, but check it out. He took the time to look it up and see what he thought about it, but he's going to get back to you. Angel Coils, Mark, was there ever a time when you believed? 30 seconds, Mark.
Believed in what? It's basically there was a time when I believed that astrology was true. I grew up in sort of a not really spiritual, but sort of a my mother believed in a lot of what I would call woo, so astrology and crystals and neuropathy. So yeah, I guess there was a time where I believed in something, but I've never believed in any god at all.
All right. Well, let's carry on from there. Big Fang Flan Wayne asks, let's move this over. Millennials are the first generations of human beings where more than half of us go where we're planned consented pregnancies. We have a long way to go, y'all.
What world do these people live in where there's this weird thing in Western society where like they have to view themselves as like special snowflakes, like in a sense, right? And I'm not even being in like the stupid conservative way. I'm just saying like millennials, we are not like special. Like I hope you know that. Like there's people who had unplanned pregnancies in the past and people who had planned pregnancies in the past. Like this is like the weird thing where they do the stereotype that like everyone in 1950 beat their wife for some reason. Like that's just what they think for some. Like not everything is an extreme. Like you guys realize that, right? Like chat.
All right. Well, we'll carry on.
I think it's more talking about the pervading culture that it was acceptable to do so, or at least it was, perfectly reasonable if you had a nagging wife to do so.
Oh, he's beating? I thought they said planned pregnancy.
Sure, but your example was beating your wife.
Oh, yeah. Sorry,
10 seconds, Hussein.
Okay, sorry, you're good. I get what you're saying. Yeah.
We'll move on from there, guys. Dr. Dino, Hussein, why should I believe you over Christians? 1 minute.
Why should you believe me over Christians? There's plenty of arguments. Like I said, look into like the Quran's preservation versus like the Bible's preservation, how we don't know the authors, how they contest what like a historical Jesus would actually believe. So if Jesus is Jewish and he's saying I come to fulfill the law, and uphold the law, why is like Pauline Christianity like denouncing the law and like getting abdicating the law? Why is the Old Testament say blood sacrifice is wrong, and then all of a sudden God is doing blood sacrifice though? Again, the entire
15 seconds.
If I was in a Christian nation, I would be an atheist. Let me just say that about. I'll give Mark some credit. Like Christianity is absurd. No offense. Does that make sense?
All right. Well, we'll move on from there.
The Trinity is illogical. I don't get the Trinity, but that's
Well, we have a moment of agreement. It looks like huzzah. Yes, clap for that. And we're going to move on to the last super chat from Dr. Dino. Mark, tell me what your favorite dino is in a Boston accent.
No more accents. I've embarrassed myself enough.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean
Um,
to flame you on your accents. I'm sorry. You know, your regular speaking voice is great, so let's just carry
it's
on.
an ankylosaur. Ankylosaur.
All right.
Boston accent.
A Boston accent. All right.
Boston accent. Ankylosaur. Oh, that's terrible. Why did I even try that? I hate you all. Like, seriously.
Well, thanks for entertaining. Hussein, 1 minute to close your thoughts on our discussion tonight. Thanks for being here.
Um, I had a lot of fun. So, and I'm glad I did it. I got to talk to Mark again, since I've been so busy, lately. So, inshallah, a lot of people understand where I'm coming from, and, maybe they'll look into Islam, and, maybe one day Mark will. I don't know. We'll see. But, I enjoyed the discussion. Thanks for being courteous too.
Yeah, well, thank you for being here, Hussein. I really enjoyed talking to you the other day on Discord as well. Everybody should know that Hussein is a really nice guy to talk to. And that was one of our super chatters questions here. We didn't get around to it. Sorry, bass guitar. But he did say that you were one of the friendliest people that he had talked to on Discord. So I do want to let you know that, and we appreciate you
Thank you.
being here. Mark Reid, up to 1 minute for your closing statement.
Yeah, so humanism is just an acknowledgement of sort of our place in the world and how we can make decisions about what's best going forward. If you're going to ignore part of your holy text and sort of say, hey, well, that was in the past and it no longer applies because we know better now, or we can now make changes and abrogate things or make things better. And what are you evaluating it on if not rationality? If you're taking some verses and not others, then what are you really basing that evaluation on apart from rationality and an understanding of what is good for humans and bad for humans? I really encourage you to sort of treat humans equally, see them as equal partners on this planet, and we can work together to decide what's best for our societies. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Mark Reid, for your closing statement. Sorry, everybody, for the PDA. My wife just got home and she's going to bed. So I just had to say hello there for a second. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Hussein, Mark, big round of virtual applause for our speakers. We will be back for more glorious debates. In the meantime, enjoy some of this music. I'm still working on it. I got some drums that I'm getting sorted out for it. So let's keep it rolling, everybody. Enjoy our next discussions and check out our debaters in the live description. We would appreciate that. See you
Just
later.
one last thing. Dr.
Yes.
Dino is doing an after show as well. I don't know if you mentioned that. So
I didn't know if he was doing one. I said I'd hang out because I'm
Apparently so.
still riding off the
Apparently
adrenaline of last night. So I'll come hang out. I don't know if Hussein wants to pop on over after he's finished doing
I'm
everything
sure
he
he's
needs to
more
do. I know you just got home from work, Hussein, when you started this, so I really appreciate you being here. So
I think he's got to pray as well.
yes, of course. And, whatever else you want to do after getting home from work, for sure. But if you want to hang out, you're, of course, more than welcome, I'm sure. I mean, who knows? It's up to Doc Dino's. So everybody, we're going to hang out over there. And thanks for being here. Cheers.
self-aggression. Tyranny's mixed with self-oppression. What am I to do but tear away when I'm boiling at the top? Try to find a way to fight the fire. Smart a rap from the minds of liars. You call the shots as you bow your heads, and the march never stops. The stars could be free, but this insanity bends you right by the knee. Running in circles now for something that can't be found. And I bet as you hit the wall, the rain starts to fall. You can run away, sing a tune that's true. I'll be beside you. Starts to decay from tears of blood, regrets of laughter. Turn around as your heart beat faster. Your hollow shape as the faith begins to drop. Shelter can find your thoughts of suicide. It's hanging down by the fray. Running in circles now for something that can't be found. And there's no time for today. Prayed away, the world would be untrue. I will rise against you. Circles now for something that can't be found. Out of breath, smashed the wall, the water consumed all. You prayed away that the world would be untrue as it rose against you. Did you think it would always be for free? Now sit back, watch it burn, burn, burn for all eternity.